The silence at Althorpe House is heavy, the kind that presses against your chest and refuses to leave. It is here, amidst the shadows of his mother's childhood home, that Prince Harry believed he would find clarity. Instead, on the night of February 14th, 2026, he found a digital wall that no amount of public sympathy could breach. The world believed the battle was over titles and security, but the real war had just shifted to the one thing the Sussexes could not spin: the cold, hard legitimacy of the bloodline. At precisely 11 p.m., Harry attempted to execute a routine withdrawal from the Diana, Princess of Wales Memorial Trust, intended for the future education of his son, Archie. It was supposed to be a formality, a birthright estimated at over $22 million. But the screen did not confirm the transfer. Instead, it displayed a notification that would freeze the blood in any father's veins. Access denied. Subject to verification of lineal descent pursuant to the 1,917 letters patent. This was not a banking error. It was an institutional blockade. Prince William, acting as the primary executor of their mother's estate, had quietly placed the Sussex children's inheritance into a suspended escrow. He was not asking for a simple DNA test from a California lab. He was invoking an ancient, terrifying clause of British peerage law. The question was no longer about whether Harry was the father. The question was whether the children were born of the body in the eyes of the crown. The ghost of the monarchy had risen to protect its own, and for the first time, Harry realized that his brother was not fighting for the past. He was fighting to ensure that the future of the House of Windsor remained uncorrupted by modern secrets. To understand why Prince William has taken the unprecedented step of freezing his own nephew's status, we must first understand the invisible contract that binds the British monarchy. It is not a contract written in ink, but in biology and witnessing. For centuries, the legitimacy of a royal heir has rested on a singular, non-negotiable legal clause found in the peerage laws: the child must be of the body. This archaic phrase constitutes the iron wall against which the Sussexes have now crashed. In the eyes of the British Constitution, DNA is only half the story. The other half is the verified, witnessed physical act of birth. The tension lies in the clash between two irreconcilable versions of truth. For Meghan and Harry, truth is scientific. It is the 99.999% probability on a lab report from Horizon Gene Diagnostics in Santa Barbara. They believe that biology dictates royalty. But for the crown, truth is procedural. It is the signature of a royal obstetrician, the presence of a witness, and the unbroken chain of custody that has defined every royal birth since the 17th century. And this is where the bloodline files, the internal memo now resting on William's desk, become devastating. The dossier highlights a silence that is deafening. Unlike the births of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, there is no signature from the royal medical household confirming the delivery of Archie. There is no record of the customary easel announcement signed by doctors Sir Marcus Setchell or Guy Thorpe Beeston. Instead, there is a void. The palace's media forensics team has reportedly analyzed timestamps and imagery, noting wildly differing belly sizes on the same dates during Meghan's pregnancy. They have flagged the absence of hospital discharge records in the royal archives. These are not merely tabloid rumors. In the eyes of the 1,837 Registry Commission, they are procedural failures that legally sever the child from the line of succession. The stakes could not be higher. If Archie and Lilibet were born via a surrogate, even if they are biologically, Harry's the 1,717 grand opinion and the subsequent peerage laws would automatically disqualify them from inheriting titles or the throne. Adoption, in the cold logic of the crown, does not equal succession. Meghan's team argued that privacy was a modern right, but William is arguing that transparency is an ancient duty. Imagine the scene inside the royal archives at Windsor. The air smells of dust and centuries-old parchment. Here, the births of kings are recorded in heavy, leather-bound ledgers, written by hand and witnessed by state officials. Contrast this with the sterile, digital PDF of a DNA test emailed from a lawyer in Oregon. One represents the weight of history. The other represents a modern transaction. William has realized that if he accepts a private lab report as a substitute for royal protocol, he doesn't just let his brother back in. He dismantles the very definition of what makes a royal a royal. The crown does not operate on trust. It operates on proof. And right now, the ledger is empty. The true war was not being fought in the tabloids, nor was it being waged in the courts of California. while the world debated the ethics of a grandfather denying his own flesh and blood. A far more sophisticated operation was underway within the thick stone walls of St. James's Palace. This was the era of the Shadow War, a period defined not by loud accusations, but by the quiet, terrifying efficiency of the Lord Chamberlain's office. At the helm of this covert inquiry was not Prince William, but the Princess Royal, Anne. Known for her no-nonsense approach to duty and her intimate knowledge of the Crown's survival mechanisms, Anne had quietly activated the Lord Chamberlain's special inquiry into the logistical anomalies of the Sussex births. Her objective was clinical. Do not look for DNA, look for the paper trail. If the biology could not be contested without a sample, the geography could be dismantled with a roster. The investigation began with a revisit to the Portland Hospital in London, the site where Archie was allegedly born in May 2019. For years, rumors had swirled about the secrecy surrounding the birth, the lack of a photo call on the steps, the delay in the announcement. But the inquiry uncovered something far more disturbing than a breach of protocol. A source within the hospital administration, speaking under the protection of the Crown's immunity, revealed that the VIP suite, reserved for the Duchess of Sussex, had been booked, paid for, and secured by royal protection officers, yet it had remained eerily empty on the night in question. There were no meal orders, no medical waste logs, and, crucially, no entry in the controlled drug register for pain relief administration, a mandatory legal requirement for any birth involving epidurals or similar procedures. This was the phantom birth theory, transitioning from conspiracy to evidence. The inquiry suggested that the hospital stay was a decoy, a masterfully orchestrated piece of theater designed to satisfy the press while the actual event took place elsewhere, or perhaps in a manner that the monarchy could not sanction. The focus then shifted to the financial undercurrents. The Bloodline files contained a flagged transaction that had been buried deep within the 2019 archival accounts of the Sussex Royal Foundation before its dissolution. It was a wire transfer of exactly $499,900. In the competitor's narrative, this money went to a clinic in Mexico. However, the Lord Chamberlain's forensic accountants traced the routing number to a high-end fertility concierge service based in San Diego. This entity was not a medical clinic in the traditional sense. It was a broker for elite reproductive privacy, specializing in surrogacy arrangements for high-net-worth individuals who required absolute anonymity. The payment date was May 1st, 2019, 5 days before Archie's birth was announced to the world. The transaction was coded in the ledger as medical logistics consultancy, but the encrypted notes attached to the file referenced a gestational NDA and a third-party settlement. The implication was devastating. The Crown suspected that the birth was not a medical event involving the Duchess, but a logistical operation involving a surrogate. If true, this would mean the child was not born of the body, rendering him ineligible for the line of succession under the 1,717 grand opinion. The Shadow War had uncovered the possibility that the entire narrative of the birth was a constructed reality, a optics strategy paid for with $500,000 of foundation money. As the Princess Royal reviewed the final dossier, the realization set in. They were not dealing with a family secret, they were dealing with a constitutional fraud. The turning point of this saga did not arrive with a bang, but with the quiet click of a play button in the private study of Kensington Palace. For weeks, the legal teams had been trading sterile documents and redacted banking ledgers. But on the evening of February 16th, the nature of the conflict shifted from a bureaucratic dispute to a moral catastrophe. The catalyst was a figure the Sussexes had long feared might one day emerge from the shadows. A former high-ranking aide from the Montecito household, a person who had been in the room when the narrative was being constructed. This whistleblower did not go to the press. They went directly to the one man who could stop the machinery of the monarchy, Prince William. They did not bring a sworn affidavit or a typed statement. They brought a digital audio file, a voice memo recorded on an encrypted device during the chaotic days leading up to the submission of the DNA petition. As the Prince of Wales sat alone, the winter rain lashing against the windows, he listened to a conversation that would shatter the remaining trust between the brothers. The recording was frantic, the voices unmistakable. It captured a strategy meeting between a senior member of the Sussex communications team and a legal advisor. They were not discussing the medical realities of a birth or the logistical retrieval of hospital records. They were discussing how to bypass them. The voice on the tape was clear, cutting through the static with a chilling pragmatism. "We don't need a medical record," the strategist urged. their tone laced with panic. "We need a narrative that fits the Netflix deal. If the doctors won't sign, find a partner lab willing to certify pre-analysis validity. We need optics, not science." This was the smoking gun. The phrase optics, not science, echoed the very accusations that had been whispered in the corridors of the 1837 Registry Commission. It confirmed that the DNA report submitted to the Crown was not a biological absolute, but a piece of unimpeachable theater designed to force the King's hand. The recording suggested that the entire legal strategy was a reverse-engineered solution, a desperate attempt to cover the tracks of a phantom birth that had left no paper trail in the royal archives. For William, the emotional weight of this moment was crushing. He realized that his brother was likely not the architect of this deception, but a pawn in a much larger game of commercial survival. The deception wasn't just about a title. It was about rewriting history to satisfy a corporate contract. The silent guardian of the monarchy could no longer afford to be passive. He had to act, not out of malice, but out of a terrifying necessity to preserve the sanctity of the bloodline. With a heavy hand, Prince William reached for a document that had been prepared by the Lord Chamberlain's office but left unsigned on his desk for days. It was the Order of Abeyance, a formidable legal instrument rooted in Clause 6 of the Sovereign Child Declaration Act of 1837. This was the nuclear option. By signing it, William was not just rejecting a DNA test. He was formally suspending the royal status of Archie and Lilibet indefinitely. The ink on the page marked the end of the negotiation. The Order of Abeyance mandated an immediate lockdown of the royal household register. It effectively erased the children from the active line of succession until a full-spectrum bloodline review could be conducted on British soil under British law. The turning point had been reached. The Crown was no longer asking questions. It was closing the gates. The private deception had forced a public execution of status, and as the file was sealed and sent to the Privy Council, William knew there was no turning back. The family was fractured, and the institution had raised its drawbridge. The flight manifest leaked by Heathrow customs officials told a story of profound isolation. On the morning of February 14, 2026, a private jet touched down on the tarmac, carrying a single passenger listed as Henry Mountbatten Windsor. There was no security detail, no press photographers, and most significantly, no Duchess of Sussex. Prince Harry had returned to the United Kingdom alone, a man stripped of his entourage, coming to face the music in the very heart of the establishment he had fled. The destination was not the corporate glass of London, but the wind-swept estate of Sandringham. The meeting took place in the Long Library, a room lined with the spines of books that chronicled centuries of royal history. Waiting for him were two men, King Charles III, looking visibly aged by the weight of the crisis, and Prince William, who stood not as a brother, but as the heir to the throne and the protector of its laws. The air in the room was not filled with anger, but with a terrifying, clinical calm. The climax of this saga did not involve shouting, it involved paper. Prince William, acting with the authority of the 1837 Registry Commission, placed two distinct documents on the mahogany table between them. The first was the DNA report Harry's team had submitted from Horizon Gene Diagnostics. William pushed it aside with a gesture of finality, dismissing it as insufficient under the 1717 Grand Opinion. He stated clearly that while biology might make Harry a father, only the law makes a child a prince. Then, he revealed the second document. It was a file that had been retrieved by the Lord Chamberlain's Special Inquiry, tracking the financial footprints of the now-defunct Sussex Royal Foundation. It detailed a wire transfer of exactly $499,900 executed 5 days before Archie's birth. The recipient was not a hospital, but a corporate entity in San Diego specializing in third-party gestational coordination. Attached to the file was a redacted copy of what appeared to be a standard non-disclosure agreement between a commissioning parent and a gestational carrier. The implication hung in the air like smoke. William was not accusing Harry of lying about his paternity. He was accusing him of circumventing the of-the-body clause that governs the line of succession. The evidence suggested that while the children were genetically Harry's, the method of their birth had legally severed their claim to the throne. Then came the ultimatum, delivered with the cold precision of a future king. William offered Harry a choice that would define the rest of his life. He could admit the truth of the surrogacy arrangement and accept a new status for Archie and Lilibet. They would be recognized as the adopted children of the Duke, loved by the family but removed from the line of succession and the Spencer Trust. Or he could continue to fight, forcing the Crown to drag the phantom birth investigation into the public courts, exposing the optics, not science recording, and the entire logistical deception to the world. King Charles remained silent, a pained observer of his son's war. Harry looked from the documents to his father, and then to his brother. For years, he had believed he was fighting a media war, a battle of narratives that could be won with Netflix documentaries and tell-all memoirs. But in that quiet library, surrounded by the ghosts of his ancestors, he realized the institution knew everything. The shadow war was over. The Crown had the receipts, the recordings, and the law. He had flown across the ocean to save his children's titles, only to find that he had to sacrifice their royal status to save them from a public scandal. The realization of defeat was absolute. The new reality did not arrive with a press conference or a proclamation from the balcony. It arrived in the dead of night, illuminated only by the glow of server screens in the basement of Buckingham Palace. In the weeks following the summit at Sandringham, the world waited for an explosion that never came. There were no more leaks from the Sussex camp, no more frantic court filings from Oregon lawyers. Instead, there was a terrifying, bureaucratic silence. The aftermath of the Bloodline Files crisis was defined by what royal historians now call the silent exile. On February 28, 2026, visitors to the official royal family website noticed a subtle but seismic shift. The profiles for Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet had not been deleted, but they had been moved. No longer listed under the line of succession alongside the children of the Prince of Wales, they were relocated to a static page titled Members of the Family, specifically placed below the minor cousins and, devastatingly, accompanied by a new asterisk. The text at the bottom of the page was brief, clinical, and legally bulletproof. Status of lineal precedence is currently held in abeyance pursuant to the 1837 Registry Commission review. It was a masterstroke of administrative erasure. The Crown had not publicly disowned the children. They had simply placed them in a constitutional quarantine. By categorizing them as loved family members rather than heirs of the body, Prince William had effectively severed the legal artery that connected them to the throne, the titles, and most critically, the money. Back in Montecito, the reality of this silent exile began to suffocate the Sussex brand. The Spencer Trust, that $22 million lifeline Harry had counted on, remained frozen. The trustees, bound by William's interpretation of the born of the body clause, refused to release a single cent without a Crown-verified birth certificate, a document Harry now knew did not exist in the form required. The financial pressure was immense. The fertility concierge in San Diego had been paid, the optics had been managed, but the payout from the legacy was blocked by the very secret they had spent millions to protect. Meghan Markle, realizing that the legal battle was lost in London, attempted to shift the war to the only battlefield she still controlled, the culture. Within days of the website update, she announced a surprise emergency episode of her podcast. Titled The Right to Choose, it was a masterpiece of narrative spin. She did not address the surrogacy allegations directly. Instead, she reframed the entire conflict as an attack on modern motherhood. They want to define us by biology, she told her listeners, her voice trembling with carefully curated emotion. But a mother is defined by love, by the choice to bring a soul into this world, however that journey looks. The institution is afraid of what it cannot control. It was a bold attempt to weaponize the phantom birth accusations into a feminist cause, characterizing the Crown's insistence on witnessing as archaic and invasive. She tried to turn the Order of Abeyance into a badge of honor for a progressive family. But the public reaction was fractured. The optics strategy that had once worked so well was now failing against the weight of institutional silence. While Meghan spoke of feelings, the palace released a single, powerful image. It was a photograph taken by the Princess of Wales in the gardens of Adelaide Cottage. It showed Prince William, casual and relaxed, playing football with Prince George and Prince Louis. The caption was simple: the next generation. There was no mention of Harry, no mention of the dispute. But the subtext was screaming. Here was the verified line. Here were the heirs born of the body, witnessed by the state, and recorded in the ledgers. The image underscored the brutal reality of the aftermath. The House of Windsor had successfully protected its bloodline by closing the gates. Harry was left in California, a prince in name but a commoner in status, holding a secret that had cost him his birthright. The silent exile was not a temporary punishment. It was the new, permanent architecture of the monarchy. In an era defined by deepfakes, AI-generated realities, and curated digital personas, the House of Windsor stands as a stubborn, perhaps necessary, anomaly. The crisis of the bloodline files teaches us a profound lesson that extends far beyond the gates of the palace. Trust is not a feeling, it is a record. The monarchy remains the last bastion of authenticated reality, a fortress where the truth must be witnessed, signed, and sealed to exist. From a personal perspective, there is a tragic irony in Prince Harry's journey. He fled the goldfish bowl to find his own truth, only to discover that the institution he left values proof over personal truth. It forces us to ask a difficult question. Can a 1,000-year-old institution survive if it allows its foundational laws to be blurred by modern secrecy? Or does the survival of the crown depend on being the one thing in the world that cannot be faked? Prince William's decision was not just about excluding 2 children. It was about preserving the definition of reality itself against a world that is increasingly comfortable with illusion. As the dust settles on the silent exile, we are left to wonder if the crown is a cruel taskmaster or a necessary guardian. If this investigation into the clash between ancient law and modern secrecy has changed your perspective, please hit the like button. Do you think Prince William was right to prioritize the of-the-body law over his brother's wishes? Or is this a heartless application of tradition? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And to ensure you never miss a revelation from inside the palace walls, subscribe and ring the bell. Truth, like blood, always finds a way to the surface. Thank you for watching.